On the day of my wedding, my wife's aunt killed herself. Before she died, she left a will, bequeathing her entire fortune to me. While going through her belongings, people discovered her diary, which was filled with expressions of her love for me. Since I cannot be the one to bring you happiness, then let me give you a lifetime of comfort and security. It was only then that I realized the reason she had never married was that she had been waiting for me. Reborn into a new life, the very first thing I did was kneel before my parents. Mom, Dad, regarding the marriage alliance with the Hayes family, I choose to marry Chloe Hayes. My parents were completely astonished to hear me make such a request. Ethan, isn't Julia the one you love? Chloe is her aunt. My eyes shifted, a hint of sorrow in my voice as a memory surfaced. It's precisely because I know the consequences of loving her that I don't dare to anymore. In my past life, Julia Hayes and I grew up together as childhood sweethearts. After we came of age and my parents mentioned the alliance between our families, I thought of all the years Julia had cared for me so attentively and chose her without a second thought. But after she heard the news, her attitude toward me began to change. It went from anger to indifference, and finally to something close to disgust. I didn't understand why, but I married her anyway, thinking things would gradually improve after we were married. But even after our child was born, I found Julia's hidden collection of thousands of photos of Leo Vance in my study. In that moment, I finally understood. The one she truly loved was her family's butler's son, but their difference in social status had kept them apart. 2 years after our wedding, Leo also married someone else, but their marriage was never a happy one. She drank herself into a stupor every day, mourning for him, and the day Leo's wife died in a car crash was the happiest day of her life. I saw it all, my heart aching with a desolate sorrow, but I could only force myself to ignore it and focus everything on raising our daughter. That was until a kidnapping case entangled both my daughter and Leo's son. The kidnappers demanded that Julia choose one of them to save. She hesitated for only a few seconds before choosing the boy who was not her own flesh and blood. The next moment, our daughter was pushed from the top of the building, falling to her death. Witnessing it all, I broke down completely and jumped after her. Now, given a second chance, I refused to torture myself again. I just want to cut all ties with Julia Hayes. My parents couldn't change my mind, so they had no choice but to agree and hurry over to the Hayes family to discuss the wedding arrangements. After they left, I received an iMessage on my phone. It was from Julia. The Onyx Lounge. Get here now. I decided to use this opportunity to tell her clearly that the marriage arrangement had changed, so I got dressed and headed out. The moment I pushed open the door to the private room, a bucket of cold water was thrown in my face, soaking me to the bone. It was immediately followed by the sound of roaring laughter from all around. Well, if it isn't the young master of the Sterling family. How'd you end up looking like a drowned rat? He deserves it. That's what happens to a pathetic simp who doesn't know his place and follows Julia around all day. Julia walked up to me, her face cold and her eyes dark with anger. Are you that desperate to marry me? The moment the rumors of our alliance started, you had your parents rush to my house to discuss the wedding, making a scene for the whole city. Now everyone in our circle knows about us. Are you satisfied now? I knew she had misunderstood. I wiped the water from my face, pushed the wet hair from my forehead, and looked at her calmly. The alliance between the Sterling and Hayes families is set in stone. It doesn't matter where it's discussed. But you don't have to worry, because this has nothing to do with you. Julia froze for a second, then sneered. Nothing to do with me? Don't tell me you're trying to say I'm not the one you're marrying. That's hilarious. Who else in the Hayes family could possibly marry you? I was about to speak when the door, which had been left ajar, was pushed open. Leo Vance burst in, and upon seeing the scene, his eyes filled with tears. Julia, I heard you were getting married. I came just to wish you happiness. I hope you and the Sterling heir have a wonderful life together. With that, his eyes red, he bolted from the room. Leo! Julia panicked, shoving me out of the way to chase after him. I was knocked back against the coffee table, my forehead striking the edge. A gash opened up, and blood began to stream down my face. A horrifying sight. The crowd in the room was still snickering and making snide comments. You can't force love. Julia doesn't want to marry him, so what if they go through with it? She'll never be home, and some pathetic simp will be left waiting alone. Amid the jeers, my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw a message from my parents. Ethan, Chloe said yes. The wedding is in 2 weeks. My parents were usually so composed. The 3 exclamation points showed just how surprised and thrilled they were that Chloe had agreed. I let out a sudden sigh of relief. I pushed myself to my feet and looked at the gawking crowd, my expression filled with a resolve they had never seen before. You don't need to worry about my happiness after I'm married. It has nothing to do with Julia. Please pass on a message for me. Tell her I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and she is not the bride. When I got home, I gathered everything that had to do with Julia and sealed it all away in a box. My parents, who had just gotten back, were taken aback when they saw what I was doing. Ethan, have you truly moved on from Julia? You don't love her anymore. When they saw me nod without the slightest hesitation, they smiled, relieved. That's wonderful. Chloe is busy overseas, so we had a video call with the Hayes family today and finalized the arrangements. Compared to Julia, Chloe is so poised and graceful. She's a much better match for you. It's just, with her reputation, we felt she was out of our league and never considered it. We honestly didn't think she would say yes, but she agreed almost immediately. My eyes instantly reddened. From the moment I made my decision, I knew Chloe would agree. In my past life, everyone from the prominent families was intimidated by her because of our age difference, myself included. We barely interacted, only seeing each other at family dinners. I only knew that she was completely dedicated to her work, having single-handedly built a corporate empire, and that she had never married. It wasn't until she took her own life at 35 that a stack of love letters was discovered in her bedroom while her things were being sorted. Every letter was addressed to my Stellan. No one in the Hayes family knew who they were for. Only I did. I was born on a night when the sky was full of stars. Stellan, meaning of the stars, was the nickname my closest relatives gave me. I never knew that this powerful, untouchable woman had been secretly in love with me for her entire life. Now that fate has given me a second chance, I'm willing to give us one. While I was lost in thought, my parents presented me with a gift box, their voices filled with warmth. Ethan, tomorrow is your birthday. Chloe couldn't make it back in time, so she had her assistant send over a gift from her study. See if you like it. As soon as I opened it, I saw a magnificent, glittering ring. It was the most expensive diamond ring sold at Sotheby's in the last 50 years, named the Starcatcher. I had been lucky enough to see it once before, and the memory was unforgettable. I never imagined Chloe would send such a priceless gift. A warmth spread through my chest. In my last life, from the moment our engagement was announced, Julia never gave me another gift. I had long forgotten what it felt like to receive a gift from the person you love. 2 days later, at 7 in the evening, the birthday party for the sterling heir began on schedule at the city's most luxurious hotel. Guests offered their congratulations, and with my marriage settled, a great weight was lifted from my shoulders, so I was able to smile. Halfway through the evening, a commotion rippled through the crowd, and all heads turned toward the entrance. I followed their gaze to see Julia, who had arrived at my birthday party with Leo in tow. But that wasn't the most humiliating part. The worst was when Julia's friends marched toward me, carrying an enormous plaque. In the center of the plaque, in large, bold letters, were the words, "To Ethan Sterling, the hypocrite." The guests pushed forward to get a better look, whispering amongst themselves. I clenched my fists, staring hard at the people causing this scene. What is the meaning of this? A few of them smirked at me and yelled out deliberately. You should be asking yourself, weren't you the one who said yesterday that Julia wasn't the bride? So why did she go home to find her family already planning a wedding? You're the master of playing hard to get, Mr. Sterling. I think this word suits you perfectly. I knew he was just putting on a brave face. Everyone knows he's been chasing Julia for years, practically groveling without any self-respect. Suddenly saying he doesn't want to marry her is just another one of his games. She's the only one in her generation of the Hayes family. Who else would he marry? The hall instantly filled with laughter. Julia stared at me, her expression icy. Ethan, stop being such a hypocrite, and don't think this will get my attention. When we get married, the title of husband is all you'll ever get from me. Nothing more. I had heard those exact words from her in my last life. She wasn't lying. In 7 years of marriage, I truly got nothing but the title. As the people around me began to murmur, I raised my voice to be heard over them. Julia, I don't need a title from you. Listen to me. The person I'm marrying is not you, and she's not from our generation. She is your. Before I could say her name, an unexpected voice cut me off. Leo suddenly clutched his face, a red rash breaking out across his skin. His eyes watering, he slumped against Julia's shoulder. Julia, I'm so itchy. Why are there so many hyacinths here? I'm allergic to them. Hyacinths were my favorite flower, so I had them placed everywhere in the hall. Hearing Leo's breathing grow more labored, Julia's face filled with panic. She kept calling his name before finally ordering someone to take him to the hospital. She left with 2 final commands. The first was for me, Ethan, after we're married. You are forbidden from having hyacinths anywhere. The second was for her friends. After I leave, trash this place. You got it, Julia. Mission accepted. Before she had even finished speaking, her friends began acting like a pack of vandals, grabbing chairs and smashing everything around them. The birthday cake was smeared across the floor, glass and porcelain shattered everywhere, and the flowers were trampled into pulp by fleeing guests. I roared in anger. Stop it! What gives you the right to destroy my birthday party? You're going to be Julia's husband, and you're such an obedient little puppy. So whatever she says, goes. Ha ha ha. I screamed until my voice was raw, but I couldn't stop them. My protests only earned me more ridicule. Eventually, all the guests left, and my birthday party ended in ruins. I spent the next few days locked in my room. When my parents found out what Julia had done, they were even more certain that my decision not to marry her was the right one. They wanted to confront the Hayes family, but I, finally emerging from my room after several days, stopped them. The wedding was just around the corner, and I didn't want any more drama. After calming my parents down, I left the house with a design sketch in hand. I hadn't locked myself away because of Julia. She was already irrelevant to me. I had been in my room designing a wedding ring for Chloe by hand. I knew the star catcher was priceless, and I wanted to repay her profound affection with a gesture of my own. I gave the design to our butler and asked him to find a master jeweler to craft it by hand. But when the deadline we'd agreed on passed, the ring still hadn't arrived. I went to inquire and learned that Julia had come by a few days ago to look at jewelry. She had spotted the ring, asked about it, and simply taken it, leaving a message. It's for me anyway, so there's no need for Ethan to come get it. The staff, knowing about the alliance between our families, didn't stop her. My heart sank. I rushed over to the Hayes house to find Julia and get the ring back. As soon as I walked in, I saw Leo sitting in front of a mountain of delivery boxes. Julia, did you secretly buy everything in my online shopping cart again? You're too good to me. How can I ever repay you? Julia said gently, it makes me happy. You don't have to repay me. And I've told you before, don't call me Miss. Only then did Leo call her Julia. I watched them exchange flirtatious glances without blinking and strode into the room. Hearing my footsteps, Julia turned, and her brow furrowed when she saw me. What are you doing here? I held out my hand. The wedding ring you took. Give it back. Julia glanced at my outstretched hand and raised an eyebrow. It's gone. My gaze sharpened, and my voice grew stern. What do you mean it's gone? While Julia was trying to come up with an excuse, Leo, who was sitting on the floor, spoke up with a smug look on his face. Mr. Sterling, I saw online that a ring is great for opening boxes, so I used it to open a few hundred of these packages. It's all scratched up now. Do you still want it? He opened his palm, revealing the ring, its surface now marred and scratched. Julia actually gave my wedding ring to Leo to use as a box cutter. A fire of rage ignited within me, spreading through my entire body until I could no longer contain it. Julia, what right do you have to take what's mine? And Leo, what gives you the right to destroy it? Have either of you ever heard the word respect? Seeing me so distraught over a ring ruined Julia's good mood. Her voice was laced with annoyance. That ring was meant for me anyway, so what are you making a scene for? Oh, and by the way, I've decided we'll just sign the papers. No wedding, so you can stop wasting your time designing rings. Her dismissive attitude made me clench my fists in anger, and I repeated myself. Julia, this ring is not for you. Julia shot back. If it's not for me, then who is it for? Ethan, that's enough. You're taking this act too far. Then she carelessly tossed the ring aside and pulled Leo out of the room. Don't waste your time with him. Leo, didn't you say you wanted to learn how to drive? Come on, I'll teach you. Watching them leave, I was overwhelmed with rage and frustration. I wanted to go after them, but I couldn't. I had to find the ring first, so I dropped to the ground and started searching. Took me a full half hour to find it in a flower bed. I carefully placed it in my pocket and left immediately. It was too late to have a new one made. My only hope was to find someone who could repair it and restore it to its original state. Just as I stepped out of the mansion, I heard a strange sound. I looked up to see a car speeding directly toward me. My eyes flew wide open. With a sickening thud, I was thrown more than 30 feet, landing in a pool of my own blood. Leo, the driver, got out of the car, feigning terror and crying. Oh no, I'm just learning to drive. I hit the gas instead of the brake. I've caused a terrible accident. Mr. Sterling, he's bleeding so much. Is he going to be okay? Julia saw the stone steps stained dark with my blood. She frowned, then pulled Leo into her arms, comforting him gently. It's fine. He's always been dramatic, playing the victim. He's just putting on a show. Ignore him. He'll get up when he's tired of the act. Don't be afraid, Leo. Don't cry. Hearing her words through a haze of pain, a chill went through me, and I couldn't stop the tears from falling. Julia, I thought that even if you didn't love me, after all those years we spent growing up together, you'd at least have some small shred of affection for me. But to comfort Leo, you were willing to completely disregard my life. Why did I ever fall in love with you in my last life? I struggled to call for help, but the moment my fingers closed around my phone, my strength gave out completely. An endless darkness washed over me, and I was submerged. When I opened my eyes again, it was the next day. Shortly after I woke up, a doctor came in with my chart and spoke gravely. Why wasn't he brought in immediately after the accident? You waited until he'd lost this much blood? Are you people insane? Remembering what happened before I passed out, I could only manage a bitter smile, unsure of how to respond. Was I supposed to tell him that my childhood love was too busy comforting another man to bother saving my life? The doctor didn't press the issue. He just continued, "Where is your wife? She needs to fill out the admission forms." The anesthesia hadn't fully worn off, and I blurted out subconsciously, "She's overseas." The words were barely out of my mouth when the door to my room opened. Julia, who had just walked in, stared at me. "Who's overseas?" "I'm right here. You signed the consent forms, so you must be his wife, right?" I thought I said someone needed to be with him around the clock while he was unconscious. "Where did you go?" "It's a good thing nothing happened. In any case, you can go take care of the paperwork now." The doctor tore a form from his clipboard, handed it to her, and left the room. "She's not my wife." Julia felt a strange pang of annoyance seeing me still trying to explain myself even after the doctor was long gone. "All right, I brought you to the hospital. You can stop playing hard to get now. It's getting old." She put a bag on the table, and her tone softened when she saw the bandages wrapped around my head. "They're still warm. You should eat them." In the past, whenever I was sick and lost my appetite, Julia would drive miles out of her way and wait in a long line to buy me red bean croissants from this specific bakery just to make me happy. But in this life, just like the last, she hadn't shown me this kind of tenderness since our engagement was announced. I looked at the steam rising from the bag, made no move to take it, and simply closed my eyes. A moment later, I heard Julia's hesitant voice. "About yesterday, Leo didn't mean to do it. Don't cause any trouble for him." So this was about Leo after all. I opened my eyes again, a laugh escaping my lips that was so bitter it brought tears to my eyes. "Julia, that was a deliberate attack. I'm going to file a police report, and I'll make sure he faces the consequences." The expression on Julia's face hardened, and she became flustered and angry. "I brought you food, and I apologized on his behalf." "Ethan, don't push it." Seeing her drop the act so quickly, I stared back at her, my eyes red, in a silent standoff. After a long moment, as if she knew I wouldn't back down, Julia rubbed her temples and sighed heavily. "Fine, let's both compromise. You're making this huge scene because you want me to marry you, right? Then I'll give you a wedding. The one our families are planning right now. The wedding you've been so desperate for. I'll be there. Are you satisfied?" Seeing the look of forced tolerance on her face, I lowered my gaze, my mind drifting back to the past. In my last life, Julia never showed up for the wedding. She despised me and she despised the wedding. And now, the only reason she was giving in was for Leo's sake. I realized that even in our last life, though she disliked me, she must have been pressured by her family to marry me. After all, Leo was her only weakness, and as a mere butler's son, he was an easy target for leverage. They weren't afraid she would disobey. But I would not make the same mistake in this life. So I told her plainly, "I don't need that. The bride isn't you, so it makes no difference whether you're there or not." Julia was thoroughly enraged. Just as she was about to explode, her phone rang. When she saw Leo's name on the screen, she forgot everything else and turned and walked out. As the door swung shut, I picked up my phone and dialed 911. After I explained the entire situation, I was told something completely unexpected. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry, but the incident has been classified as an accident. Your fiancé signed a waiver of charges at the scene, so we can't open a case." Hearing this, I felt a surge of suffocating anger and hurled my phone against the wall, shattering it. Over the next few days, Julia visited the hospital almost daily, bringing fruit and soup. She even arranged for several specialists to consult on my case. My emotions had stabilized, and I treated her as if she didn't exist. Seeing my coldness, she grew anxious, unsure what new game I was playing. But since I was a patient, she had no choice but to hold her tongue. On the day I was discharged, I refused to get in her car. Unable to contain her frustration any longer, she confronted me. I've already compromised. How long are you going to keep this up? If you keep pushing, what if I decide not to marry you at all? I knew she wouldn't believe any explanation I gave, so I just lowered my head and pretended I hadn't heard. In Julia's eyes, this was a sign of submission. Her mood finally improved, and her tone softened considerably. Don't cause any more trouble. My aunt is returning today, and I'm taking you to a family dinner. She's the head of the Hayes family, and tonight she'll announce our marriage to everyone. Since I've agreed, I'll be there. I'll give you the grand wedding you want. That should make you happy, right? At that, I finally looked up at her, a flicker of genuine excitement in my voice for the first time in days. Your aunt is back? Seeing me act like my old self again, Julia smirked knowingly. Yes, are you that desperate to marry me? Don't worry, I'll be at the wedding. Just stop with the games. Playing hard to get is fine once or twice, but any more than that and it gets boring. Julia opened the car door as she spoke. I knew she wouldn't listen to any explanation, so I didn't bother. I got into the passenger seat and said, I need to go home and change. Seeing how seriously I was taking this dinner, she must have assumed it was because I loved her so much that I wanted to make a good impression on her aunt. Julia raised an eyebrow but, for once, actually agreed. Once I was ready, we drove to the main Hayes family estate. The banquet was crowded, but no one was surprised to see me, and they all greeted me warmly. I returned their greetings and then found a seat in the corner to wait for Chloe's arrival. I was on edge all night, my heart hammering in my chest, because I had no idea what it would be like to see her again. Julia, sitting beside me, quickly noticed my distraction and shot me an annoyed look. I'm right here. What are you staring into space for? This is your last warning. I've already agreed to marry you, so you'd better stop acting like this, or I might just change my mind. I fought the urge to argue back, holding my tongue. She would find out soon enough that she wasn't the bride. There was no point in wasting my breath. A few minutes later, the main doors to the hall finally opened, and everyone turned in unison, craning their necks in anticipation. But it wasn't Chloe who appeared. It was her grandfather, the patriarch of the Hayes family. He walked unsteadily to the center of the room and made an announcement. Chloe was in a minor car accident on her way to the airport and missed her flight. She is still overseas and will not be able to join us this evening. Hearing this, I shot to my feet, my voice tight with alarm. Mr. Hayes, how is she? Is it serious? The old man waved a reassuring hand. She's fine, and it won't interfere with our plans. Don't you worry, Ethan. Julia frowned, pulled me back into my seat, and whispered harshly. Even though the marriage is happening, you're not officially part of the family yet. Don't be so overly concerned about my aunt just to show off. It's improper. I was at my limit and about to speak up, but Mr. Hayes cleared his throat, and the room instantly fell silent. I've gathered you all here today to announce the marriage alliance between the Sterling and Hayes families. The wedding date has been set for 1 week from today at the Crestwood estate. The groom will be the heir of the Sterling family, Ethan Sterling. As the old man's voice boomed through the hall, Julia received a message from Leo. I don't know what it said, but her expression changed instantly. She shot up from her seat and hurried out of the room, missing the end of the announcement. And the bride will be the head of the Hayes family, Chloe Hayes. The unexpected announcement sent a shockwave through the room, and everyone began to whisper excitedly. Did I hear that right? He said Chloe, not Julia. The murmurs nearly filled the entire hall, but given Chloe's status, no one dared to say much despite their shock. Instead, they turned to me as I stood and offered their congratulations. After the dinner, I still couldn't get the accident off my mind, so I went to speak with Mr. Hayes privately. He clapped me on the shoulder, his face beaming. Chloe sent a picture. I saw it. It's just a minor scrape. She'll be fine in no time. You just focus on getting ready for the wedding, Ethan. Only then was I able to put my mind at ease. For the next few days, I stayed home, focused on preparing the invitations and other wedding details, shutting out the rest of the world. During that time, I received a flood of messages from Julia's friends, but I didn't open any of them. Then one night, I accidentally opened one and realized they were all about the same thing. Julia got hurt and is in the hospital, Mount Sinai, room 609. Aren't you going to visit? Remember to bring some of that chicken soup she likes. What's with you not replying? Are you still playing that tired old hard-to-get game? Give it a rest. Ethan, what the hell are you doing? Stop pretending. You're a simp. Get over here now. Reading these messages now just seemed laughable. I took a moment to type out a reply. Julia is in the hospital. She has nurses, she has you, and she has Leo. What does that have to do with me? After the message sent, I opened Facebook. I scrolled through my feed and saw post after post from Julia, all pictures of her in the hospital. I was surprised, because in all the time I'd known her, she almost never posted anything. But I didn't dwell on it. I closed the app and started messaging some of the Hayes family members I'd recently connected with, asking them about Chloe. When I learned that Chloe loved fish, I went to our family's private pond the next day to catch a few and practice my cooking, hoping to make it for her one day. Just as I'd picked out a good one, I turned to see Leo walking toward me. I had no idea how he'd gotten onto the property. He had an expression of pure innocence on his face. Mr. Sterling, are you angry because you found out Julia hurt her hand fighting to protect me? It's all my fault. Blame me. I know you're her fiancé, and I'm just the butler's son. I'm not worth her going to all this trouble. Hearing his passive-aggressive, manipulative tone, I frowned and turned to walk away. Leo grabbed my arm, and as I looked at him in confusion, his expression shifted into a defiant smirk. Before I could process his sudden change in demeanor, he raised his hand and slapped himself hard across the face, bursting into tears. Mr. Sterling, hit me, yell at me, I'll take it. I'm just begging you. Please stop being angry with Julia. Just go and see her. You can do whatever you want of me. I won't fight back. Seeing this bizarre performance, my eye twitched. I knew something was wrong. Just as I tried to pull my arm free, Julia stormed in with a group of her friends, surrounding us. Her face was a mask of fury. Ethan, why did you hit Leo? I already told you I'd go through with the wedding. Don't be so ungrateful. I looked at her coldly. I didn't touch him. There's a security camera right over there. You can check it yourself. I turned to leave, but Julia, blinded by rage, glared at me, completely deaf to my words. I used to think you were just a spoiled brat, but now I see you're completely beyond help. With that, she had her friends grab me and then took Leo by the hand. Leo, I won't let anyone push you around. Hit him back. At first, Leo mumbled that he couldn't, but after her friends all egged him on, he dropped the act and slapped me across the face with all his strength. The sharp crack echoed as my face swelled instantly. The cut on my forehead, which hadn't fully healed, started to bleed again. A searing pain shot through me, and my ears began to ring. While no one was paying attention, Leo shoved me, still stunned, into the pond. Then he put on a show of trying to help me. Julia gave me one cold glance before turning and leaving with her friends. Don't bother with him. The water's shallow. He won't drown. I thrashed in the water for what felt like an eternity until my strength gave out. Finally, someone found me and pulled me out. I went home and developed a high fever that night. It still hadn't broken by the next morning. I had a series of fevered dreams about the past, muttering deliriously in my sleep. The day before the wedding, I received an iMessage. It contained a single sentence. I'm back. See you tomorrow. There was no name attached, but I knew it was from her. From Chloe. My anxious heart suddenly felt calm, and I slept soundly for the first time in days. The next day at 10 o'clock, the wedding cars from the Hayes family arrived at my house, followed by a camera crew. The wedding of our two powerful families was going to be live-streamed for the entire city to see. When Julia saw me in my white tuxedo, a flicker of admiration crossed her face. For some reason, she seemed to have a sense of déjà vu. She stood there, lost in thought, until someone next to her prompted her to offer me her hand. But I didn't take it. I simply looked at her, my expression calm, and spoke quietly. Julia, you're in the wrong place. You should be in the pews with the other guests. My words infuriated her, and her expression immediately soured. Are you starting this again? Don't you realize this wedding is being broadcast live to the entire city? Are you determined to make a scene and humiliate both our families? I didn't argue with her. I just walked down the stairs by myself. Just as I was about to get into the limousine, her phone rang. A few minutes later, she hung up, closed the car door, and looked at me sitting inside. Something important has come up. I can't make it to the ceremony. You go ahead and tell our parents the wedding is off. She must have expected me to be devastated and humiliated by her words. But I just looked at her calmly and said, I told you before, it doesn't matter if you're there or not, because you are not the bride. Seeing my calm demeanor, a flicker of panic crossed Julia's face, but she insisted, I said the wedding is off. If the bride doesn't show up, do you really want to become the laughingstock of the entire city? This time, I didn't even bother to reply. I just told the driver to go. A moment later, the long procession of cars pulled away. Julia didn't have time to deal with what she thought was my tantrum. She hailed a cab on the side of the road. By the time she reached the resort on the outskirts of the city, she found Leo surrounded by their friends, and she frowned. I thought you said Leo was in danger. Her friends laughed, pulling her inside. We had to lie. How else were we going to get you to ditch the wedding? We just wanted to see what a fool Ethan would make of himself today. Hearing this, Julia's expression changed. She shoved their hands off her shoulders and turned to leave. This is ridiculous. Leo grabbed her arm, his voice pleading. Julia, my head really does hurt a little. Please, stay with me? Besides, we're so far from the venue now, you'd never make it back in time anyway. While she hesitated, her friends had already pulled up the wedding live stream on a large screen. On the screen, the ceremony was proceeding exactly as planned. Seeing me stubbornly going ahead with the ceremony, they all started to snicker. He still hasn't given up? How humiliating is it going to be when there's no bride at the altar? Ethan is just desperate. He's making a joke of both families' reputations. It's going to be hilarious when this all blows up in his face. Julia had no idea what I was thinking, and her face grew dark with anger. She was just about to call her family when someone next to her gasped. The ceremony is starting. Julia instinctively looked up at the screen. I was standing alone at the altar. A long time passed, and still no bride appeared. The live stream chat was flooded with question marks and comments saying, "The bride ditched him." Everyone in the room was howling with laughter. Some of them bent over, clutching their stomachs. Julia, who had expected this all along, watched with a cold expression, her voice tight with fury. This is absurd. She couldn't bear to watch any longer and reached to turn it off. But just as she did, the officiant's voice rang out. And now the bride. The next moment, the large, closed doors swung open. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, Chloe Hayes made her entrance, walking slowly down the aisle in a wedding gown adorned with sky-blue diamonds. She gave a slight nod to the guests, her calm, unreadable gaze sweeping across the room, carrying an undeniable aura of authority. The entire hall fell instantly and completely silent. The guests were stunned. No one had imagined that the bride in the Sterling Hayes wedding would be Chloe. The group watching the screen, who had been waiting for a disaster, were frozen in place as if turned to stone. Julia gritted her teeth, her voice trembling with fury. My aunt? Impossible. This has to be a mistake. Her words snapped everyone else out of their shock, and they began to stammer in agreement. Right, the officiant must have gotten it wrong. There's no way Chloe Hayes would marry Ethan. They're not even the same generation. If Julia isn't good enough for Ethan, how could he possibly be worthy of Chloe? It's just a mix-up, that's all. While they were all still in denial, Chloe had already reached the altar, and the ceremony was proceeding to the next stage. The exchange of vows. Chloe Hayes, do you take Ethan Sterling to be your husband, to love and to cherish, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live? When they heard Chloe's clear and confident voice say, I do, the entire room fell into a dead silence. Everyone stared, mouths agape, watching the scene unfold in utter disbelief. Julia's mind went completely blank, and she felt a cold shock, as if the blood were freezing in her veins. She snatched a set of car keys, shoved the table in front of her aside, and ran out like a woman possessed, ignoring the calls of her friends behind her. Julia's mind was consumed by a single thought. He was her fiancé. He was supposed to marry her and only her. He could not marry her aunt. She slammed the pedal to the floor, speeding through more than a dozen red lights. By the time Julia arrived, the reception was winding down. Most of the guests were gone, leaving only close family from the Sterling and Hayes sides. She spotted me immediately, standing in the middle of a circle of relatives, laughing and talking. She marched right up and grabbed my arm, her voice filled with a panic I had never heard before. You're coming with me. Before I could say a word, members of both our families spoke up. Julia, what are you doing? It's your aunt's wedding to Ethan. Why are you only showing up now that it's over? Ethan and Chloe need to head back to the estate for the tea ceremony soon. What are you trying to do? Julia, let go of him right now. Your usual antics are one thing, but this is your aunt's wedding day. If you make a scene, you'll have me to answer to. Despite the rebukes from her parents and relatives, Julia stubbornly tightened her grip on my arm. My wrist was turning red from her grip. I frowned and was about to speak when a soft voice came from behind me. "Let go of him." It was only 3 words, but Julia released my arm as if she'd received an electric shock. She didn't even dare to turn her head, mumbling, "Aunt Chloe." Chloe didn't answer her. The crowd parted, and she walked directly to my side. She took my hand, gently rubbing my wrist where Julia had gripped it, before finally glancing at her niece. "He is your uncle now." The air seemed to freeze. Julia clearly hated the title, but under Chloe's powerful gaze, the hair on her arms stood on end. A deep-seated fear compelled her to whisper the words, "Uncle Ethan." In front of both our families, I responded graciously, "We're all family now." Each word landed like a heavy stone in Julia's chest, making it hard for her to breathe. She clenched her fists, her eyes fixed on me. I could feel her resentment and anger, but it didn't matter to me. I took Chloe's hand and asked with a smile what was next on our schedule. Chloe glanced at her watch, and when she looked up, a rare warmth softened her usually composed eyes. "My flight was delayed, so we missed the morning tea ceremony. Tradition says we should go to the estate to do it now, but you've had a long day. We can postpone the formalities until tomorrow. Let's go home and rest, okay?" Hearing this, the older Hayes family members began to laugh and tease her. "Well, look at that. Marriage changes people. She's already looking after her husband. Chloe always seems so reserved and distant. I never knew she had such a gentle side. It's wonderful. Our youngest is finally married, and the whole family is here to celebrate." "Wonderful." Mr. Hayes, his face glowing with happiness, waved his hand and said loudly, "As long as the 2 of you are happy together, that's all that matters. The tea can wait. Let's not bother the newlyweds. Everyone, let's give them some space." Amid the light-hearted teasing, Chloe led me away from the reception hall. Watching our retreating figures, Julia clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. Once everyone was gone, all the anger and pain she had been suppressing finally erupted. What in the world just happened? Wasn't I supposed to be the one marrying Ethan? Her parents, who had been basking in the joy of the day, were startled by her outburst and looked at their daughter with annoyance. "What are you talking about? When the Sterlings came to our house 2 weeks ago, Ethan and his parents specifically asked for your aunt's hand in marriage. Your name was never even mentioned. Why would you think it was you?" Leo and his friends, who had just arrived, walked in and froze when they heard this. Seeing Leo among the group that had just barged in, Julia's parents immediately understood why she had missed the wedding, and their expressions grew grim. "You ditched your aunt's wedding to run off with this crowd? Have you no shame? Every single member of both families was there today except for you. If Ethan's father hadn't spoken up for you, your grandfather was ready to punish you severely. From now on, Ethan is your uncle. You will show him respect and you will not step out of line. If you make your aunt angry, no one will be able to protect you." With each sharp reprimand, the color drained from Julia's face, leaving it deathly pale. She had never imagined that one day, I would be her uncle. She closed her eyes in despair as all the moments she had mocked me for flashed through her mind. It was only then that Julia finally understood. It was all real. I had never lied to her. She had just been so used to me chasing after her that she had completely missed the change in me. I hadn't been that person since the day our engagement was first announced. But how could the person who seemed so desperate to marry her just yesterday change so completely overnight? Maybe it wasn't me who had changed, but my feelings. The things she had done had hurt me too deeply, and that's why I had decided to let her go. Or was this, marrying her aunt, just another elaborate scheme to get her attention? 1,000 possibilities raced through Julia's mind. She felt like her head was going to explode as she clutched at her hair. Seeing her in such a state, Leo rushed to her side, holding her and trying to comfort her. Julia's parents, who were about to leave, saw this, and their expressions turned to disgust. A butler's son, dreaming of marrying into the Hayes family. Of course, I knew about Chloe's feelings for me, but because we had barely interacted in either life, I still felt a little awkward when we were finally alone. Chloe seemed to sense my unease and spoke softly, "Everyone calls you Ethan." I was surprised she spoke first. I nodded slightly. "My grandparents call me Stellan. You can call me that, too." The words were barely out of my mouth before the tips of my ears turned red as I inexplicably thought of that stack of love letters I had only glimpsed once. A glimmer appeared in Chloe's eyes as if she remembered something, and a gentle smile touched her lips. "Stellan, it means of the stars, doesn't it?" For some reason, I could hear a hint of delight in her voice. I couldn't contain my curiosity and glanced over at her. The moment our eyes met, I found myself captivated, unable to look away. The next moment, she said something that completely shattered my image of her. Stellan is nice and so is Ethan, but I think I like husband the best. After all, it's a title only I can use. Hearing that last word, my heart began to pound like a drum. Even with the air conditioning on, I felt hot and sweaty, and our clasped hands felt clammy. Chloe chuckled softly, thoughtfully turned down the AC, and handed me a handkerchief. As I took it to wipe my brow, I heard her continue. I know there's a bit of an age gap, 7 years, but if you round it, we're practically the same age. The driver, who had worked for the Hayes family for over 30 years, couldn't help but chuckle from the front seat. Ms. Hayes, what kind of math is that? That's quite a stretch. Chloe glanced in the rearview mirror at the driver, who was grinning from ear to ear, and sighed with mock exasperation. Manny, don't undermine me. All right, my lips are sealed. You were saying. Chloe turned her attention back to me and picked up where she left off. Even though we didn't know each other well before, we're married now. You don't have to be so intimidated by me. We should be like any other couple. You can say whatever is on your mind. I promised to listen to my husband's advice and be a good wife. It was the first time I had ever heard her speak at such length, and the first time I had ever seen her chat so casually. I was still adjusting to this new side of her and couldn't help but ask, I can say whatever I want? When Chloe nodded, I gathered my courage and asked a question. Why did you agree to marry me? Chloe paused for a second before her composure returned, and she countered with a question of her own. I can answer that, but first, I want to ask you something. Why did you choose me? Now it was my turn to be on the spot. Luckily, I thought fast and came up with a few reasons. I'm the sole heir to the Sterling fortune, and you're the head of the Hayes family. An alliance is supposed to be a union of strength, right? Besides, our age difference isn't that significant. I'm sure we have things in common, so getting along won't be an issue. And since you're so accomplished, I figured I'd start by asking the best. If you said yes, well, then I'd be the luckiest man alive, wouldn't I? Chloe knew immediately that I was just making it up and that this wasn't the real reason. But there were some things she truly needed to know, so after I finished my rambling explanation, she pressed further. So, in your mind, was I your first choice for this marriage, with Julia as the backup plan? The car fell silent. Hearing her name always brought back painful memories. Chloe realized I didn't want to talk about her and was about to change the subject, but then she heard my voice, low and serious. No. After I said that one decisive word, I looked up and met her gaze. If you hadn't agreed, I would have found a way to call off the alliance altogether. Hearing my answer, Chloe let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. She fiddled with her fingers for a moment before asking 2 more questions that were clearly important to her. Is there something wrong with Julia? I thought you were very much in love with her. Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with a complex emotion I couldn't quite decipher. But I heard it. I knew why she was asking, and I knew my answer would define our relationship from this point forward. Chloe was a proud, self-possessed woman. She would never allow herself to be a consolation prize for someone she couldn't have. In my last life, she had buried those feelings so completely for decades that they were only discovered after her death. It showed an almost inhuman level of self-control. If she knew I had been reborn and had only chosen her to avoid my past fate, she would lock those feelings away forever. That wasn't what I wanted, so I lied. Honestly, I was only ever attracted to her looks. I figured if I had to marry someone, it might as well be a beautiful woman, so I pursued her. You're so well connected, you must have known she was in love with someone else, right? I'm not like you. I only just found out. I'm the heir to the Sterling family. I can't tolerate my wife having another man in her heart, so I decided to end things with her, no hesitation. You're 1,000 times better than she is, so I thought I'd take a shot. Besides, everyone in New York knows that when I want something, I'm not afraid to go after it, no matter how it makes me look. I tried to keep my tone light, but Chloe could see the unshed tears in my eyes. After years in the business world, she had seen every kind of person and could read people with ease. But looking at me, even though she knew I was lying, she couldn't bring herself to say anything harsh. She just wanted to hold me, and that's exactly what she did. After all, we were husband and wife now. She gently rubbed my back, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. That's not shameless. That's brave. It was such a simple sentence, but it smoothed over the jagged scars that had been carved into my heart for years. After the moment passed, I felt a little embarrassed thinking back on it. But before I could dwell on it, Chloe spoke. You asked why I agreed to the marriage. The reasons are similar to yours. is a powerful alliance for our families. Secondly, you're a good man. And thirdly, I'm at an age where it's time to get married. I knew she was just giving me a convenient excuse. In her last life, she had resisted her family's pressure to marry until she was 35, all for me. So I muttered under my breath, "Liar!" A flicker of surprise crossed Chloe's eyes, but she just gave a non-committal nod. "You lied to me too, so I'd say we're even." That night, Julia drank herself sick, vomiting but still refusing to put down her glass. Leo, his voice hoarse, pleaded with her. "Julia, please stop drinking. You're going to end up in the hospital. Please don't do this to yourself over some ungrateful social climber." His words seemed to cut through the haze of alcohol, and some clarity returned to Julia's eyes. She grabbed Leo by the collar, her voice thick with alcohol. "Social climber? He only married my aunt to make me angry. I've known him for more than 10 years. I know exactly how his mind works. He just wants me to chase him a little. I'll go to him right now. All I have to do is crook my finger, and he'll come running back." With that, Julia pushed the bottle away and staggered toward the door. Leo bit his lip and followed, his face a mask of resentment. The taxi dropped them at our villa, and Julia punched in the security code and let herself in. The relentless pounding on the door shattered the quiet of the night, waking everyone in the house. The butler opened the door, and seeing her state, quickly had a staff member help her inside while he went to get Chloe. The cool night air seemed to sober Julia up slightly. She insisted on following the butler upstairs and began hammering on our bedroom door. Chloe, woken by the noise, opened the door. Her expression turned to ice when she saw Julia's drunken state. "Take her downstairs and sober her up." The butler immediately escorted Julia away. Only Leo remained in the hallway. He kept his head down, trying to make himself invisible, his voice trembling on the verge of tears. "Good evening, Miss Hayes." Chloe glanced at him, and just as she was about to ask what was going on, she heard footsteps behind her. "What's all the noise?" When she saw me walk out, rubbing my eyes, the iciness in her expression melted, and she turned to take my arm. "It's nothing. Go back to bed. I'll handle this." Hearing my voice, Leo couldn't help but look up. He saw the man Julia had been obsessing over all night being tenderly cared for by another woman. The realization that all his recent scheming had come to nothing, and that the man he despised was now living the life he coveted, filled Leo with a bitter resentment. He couldn't resist stirring up trouble. "Mr. Sterling, Julia has been heartbroken all night because of your wedding. I know you're angry with her, but you shouldn't use Miss Hayes as a pawn just to hurt Julia. She already agreed to marry you. How could you go back on your word like that?" It had only been a few days, but Leo's talent for passive-aggressive manipulation had clearly grown. I raised an eyebrow, about to respond, when I heard Chloe's low voice. "Such a sharp tongue. Tomorrow, I'll have to ask my sister-in-law how she managed to train such an articulate member of her staff." Hearing the words sister-in-law, a chill ran down Leo's spine. Julia's parents had never liked him and had tried to fire his family on several occasions, only to be stopped by Julia each time. If Chloe herself made a complaint, nothing could save his family. He began to stammer out a defense, his words tumbling over each other. "No, Miss Hayes, it's the truth. Mr. Sterling has always wanted to marry Julia. Everyone in New York knows that." Before he could finish, I flexed my wrist and hit him twice hard, across the face. I put all my strength into it, and the force of the blows made Leo see stars, both of his cheeks immediately swelling. Stunned by the slaps, Leo lost all composure and collapsed to the floor, screaming, "What gives you the right to hit me?" I blew on my stinging palm and glanced at him nonchalantly. "One of those was for hitting me with your car. The other was for the slap you gave me. Is that so hard to understand?" Hearing this, Chloe's expression hardened. When she looked down at the man on the floor, the look in her eyes sent a shiver of pure fear through Leo. It wasn't anger or contempt. It was the cold indifference one might show an insect. In that instant, his scalp prickled. For the first time in his life, he felt he was truly close to death. Just as he was about to break, the butler emerged with Julia, who was now mostly sober. She saw me immediately and stumbled toward me, reaching for my arm, but Chloe slapped her hand away. Years of getting her own way made her want to lash out, but when she looked up and saw her aunt's face, her anger instantly turned to fear. Aunt Chloe. Chloe had never been one to pull rank on her niece, who was not much younger than her. But tonight, she was in no mood for pleasantries. She didn't hold back, reprimanding Julia right there in front of the staff. "Julia, are you bringing your drunken tantrums to my house now? And with this vicious little dog in tow? Have you forgotten what I told you? The Hayes family does not tolerate useless freeloaders. Her words plunged the entire villa into a frosty silence. No one dared to breathe. Everyone seemed to shrink into themselves, trying to become invisible, lest they draw the matriarch's ire. Except for me. It was the first time I had ever seen Chloe so angry, and the first time I had seen the normally untouchable Julia so completely cowed. I couldn't help but be impressed. It was true that everyone has someone they can't defy. Now that I had someone in my corner, I didn't have to hold back anymore. I decided to make things perfectly clear. Julia, since you'll be calling me uncle from now on, I'm going to be direct. I have no desire to be a part of your tragic love story with Leo. Whether you two are together or not has nothing to do with me. So, from now on, stay out of my life. I have my own family now, and I am your elder. When we do see each other, I expect you to show me a basic level of respect. I'm not asking you to bow and scrape, but common courtesy is required. We wouldn't want people to say the Hayes family failed to teach their daughter manners, would we? My words made Julia's temples throb with anger. She was about to argue back when she heard the other voice, the one she truly feared. Did you not understand him? I understand. Seeing Julia bow her head in submission, Chloe looked tired. She said one last thing before leading me back to our room. If you understand, then leave. Or do I need to have you escorted out? Julia didn't dare stay a second longer. She grabbed Leo and practically fled down the stairs. The house was quiet once more. I yawned and had just settled back into bed when Chloe curled up against me. What was this about a car accident? Is that where the cut on your forehead came from? Tell me everything. I didn't want to worry her, so I tried to laugh it off. It's nothing, really. It's all in the past. See? I'm perfectly fine. Chloe frowned, cutting me off as she picked up her phone to schedule a full medical examination for me. If you were hurt, it is not nothing to. Hearing the genuine concern in her voice, I felt a lump in my throat. I told her everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The next afternoon, Julia was shaken awake from a hazy sleep. She opened her eyes, her head pounding, and was about to snap at whoever woke her when she saw Leo, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Julia, your mother is firing my parents. She's kicking my whole family out. You have to do something. The last vestiges of her hangover vanished at his words. She shot up in bed, her voice filled with disbelief. That's impossible. She immediately grabbed her phone to call her mother and find out what was happening. But as soon as her mother heard why she was calling, she hung up. This is not up for discussion. Hearing that final, decisive answer, Leo began to cry even harder, clinging to her and begging. Julia, please try talking to her again. My family hasn't done anything wrong. I just want to stay by your side. You have to understand that, right? Seeing him so distraught, Julia's heart ached for him. After finding out her mother was at the main family estate, she rushed over, bringing Leo's family with her. The normally quiet estate was bustling with people today. You could hear the sound of conversation from a distance. Julia didn't know what was going on inside and planned to wait for her mother to come out, but after only a few minutes of Leo's incessant pleading, she gave in and stormed inside. The moment the doors burst open, everyone in the main hall turned to look. When she saw the entire Hayes clan, young and old, gathered with my parents, and Chloe and I kneeling before her grandfather for the tea ceremony, Julia realized she had chosen a terrible time. She was about to lead them out, but Leo's mother, completely oblivious to the situation, fell to her knees before Julia's parents, weeping. Ma'am, my husband and I have served you and the master for over a decade. I watched Miss Julia grow up. Why would you fire us without a word? If we've done something wrong, please just tell us. We'll fix it. Being confronted like this by her staff in front of everyone, Mrs. Hayes's face darkened with fury. That's enough. We will discuss this at home. This is the family estate, Mrs. Vance. You are out of line. Hearing the words family estate, Mrs. Vance only cried harder, crawling on her knees to plead her case before the old patriarch himself. In an instant, the solemn tea ceremony had turned into a chaotic public hearing. The three Vances insisted that the patriarch intervene. Julia's parents were furious but felt bound by propriety and couldn't stop them. Old Mr. Hayes had always been known for his kindness and fair treatment of his staff, so he felt compelled to get to the bottom of the matter. Seeing her grandfather get involved, Julia knew this was serious. She stayed silent, desperately trying to catch Leo's eye. But Leo, lost in his own despair, misinterpreted her signals as a sign that she was abandoning him. He began to prostrate himself on the floor alongside his mother. Just as the scene was about to become completely untenable, Chloe picked up a teacup from the table and smashed it on the floor in front of the Fiancée. The sharp crack of shattering porcelain silenced the chaotic room instantly. After helping me back to my seat, Chloe walked over to her grandfather and bowed slightly. "Grandfather, why don't you and Mr. and Mrs. Sterling go upstairs for some tea? Leave this to me. I will handle it and give everyone a satisfactory explanation." With her assurance, her grandfather was content. He led my parents upstairs. Only the Hayes family remained in the room. Chloe took the seat at the head of the room and looked down at the three kneeling figures, her voice completely devoid of emotion. "Leo, I recall you being quite articulate. Why don't you speak for your family and explain the situation clearly?" Facing the matriarch that all her subordinates feared, Leo was terrified. But he also knew that with so many witnesses, this was his only opportunity. So he wiped his tears and, still kneeling, recounted his version of events. After he finished, everyone from the Hayes relatives to the security staff at the door looked utterly baffled. "It's the 21st century. You got fired. It's not like you can't find another job. Is all this drama really necessary?" Only Chloe's expression remained unchanged throughout. She summoned her brother and sister-in-law, Julia's parents, and had them gather the entire household staff. In front of everyone, she asked the staff for their opinions on the Fiancée's dismissal. At this, the previously silent staff members began to speak up one by one, revealing what they had been holding back. "I think Mrs. Hayes did the right thing. Leo uses Miss Julia's affection for him to act like he owns the place. I agree. Mrs. Vance never stops bragging about how her son is going to marry into the family. She pushes all her work onto the rest of us and is lazy all day. Mr. Vance is just as bad. He steals gifts that guests bring, and if he gets caught, he just says Miss Julia gave him permission. It's happened more times than I can count." As the accusations mounted, the faces of the Vance family turned ashen. Even Julia, who had been on the verge of defending them, had a conflicted expression on her face. The rest of the Hayes family looked on with either righteous anger or cold disdain. Any sympathy they might have had for the three was gone. I lifted my teacup and took a sip, a cold light in my eyes. This same scene had played out in my last life. But back then, there had been no wedding. Chloe was overseas and Julia, instead of accompanying me to the tea ceremony, had barged in with the Fiancée. The elderly Mr. Hayes, his heart softened by their tears, had scolded Julia's parents on the spot. Although her parents had apologized, it wasn't long before they found another excuse to fire the Fiancée, this time demanding they pay for damages. The Fiancés were saddled with an enormous debt. With no other options, they were forced to have Leo marry into the debt collector's family to settle it. His wife died 3 years into their marriage, and that was when my own fate took its tragic turn. In this new life, by changing whom I married, I had changed the course of the story. In the same situation, but with Chloe in charge, I knew things would be different. And I was right. After Julia's parents had also stated their case, Chloe delivered her verdict. "Everyone has heard the testimony. The stolen goods are likely still in the Fiancée's possession. Brother, sister-in-law, based on the situation, I believe you should file a police report for theft and seek recovery of the stolen property. What do you think?" Her words jolted them into action. Julia's parents immediately had someone call the police. Realizing the items they had stolen were worth a fortune, Mr. and Mrs. Vance became hysterical, prostrating themselves on the floor and begging for mercy. Having been thoroughly humiliated, Julia's parents showed no mercy. Hearing the approaching sirens, Leo crawled on his knees to Julia, begging her through his tears. But Julia, having witnessed everything, felt no pity for him. The look she gave him no longer held any of its former tenderness. "Now that it's come to this, from now on," the rest of her words caught in her throat. She stared in disbelief, her eyes wide, as Mr. Vance ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife and took his own life. Just as Leo's hysterical screams began, Mrs. Vance, with a look of utter despair, did the same. Dark red blood splattered across the marble floor. The security cameras had recorded the entire sequence of events clearly. The police secured the scene, took statements, and prepared to take the bodies and a catatonic Leo back to the station. Julia clung to Leo, refusing to let him go. He was limp in her arms, his eyes vacant, clearly in a state of shock. Her heart went out to him, and she tried to reason with the police, asking them to wait until he had calmed down. Chloe stopped her. She produced a file with a video recording and handed it to the lead officer, speaking in a calm, measured tone. "Officer, this is a security recording. It clearly shows Leo Vance attempting to murder my husband. I would like to file a formal complaint and request a full investigation." At her words, Leo, who had been catatonic, snapped to his senses and began to scream. "It wasn't me. It was an accident. The police already cleared it, and Julia signed the waiver. You can't press charges," he argued frantically, and Julia tried to back him up. Chloe didn't give her the chance. "Officer, the signatory of that waiver is merely a friend of my husband. As she is not his legal spouse, that document has no legal standing. Furthermore, my husband, the victim, wishes to press charges. Do you understand?" The officer's expression became serious. He formally accepted the evidence and prepared to take Leo into custody. Julia tried to intervene again, but Chloe stopped her with a single sentence. "If you walk out that door with him today, you no longer need to consider yourself a Heiress. This family will not harbor anyone who conspires with an attempted murderer. Furthermore, you were present at the scene, and you signed that waiver. You will be subpoenaed by the police, and I expect you to tell them the complete truth. As for whether you are an innocent bystander or an accomplice, we will let the police and the courts decide." The color drained from Julia's face, and she didn't dare say another word. Seeing her stand frozen, Leo's last glimmer of hope died. He wrenched himself free from the officer's grasp, lunged at her, and slapped her hard across the face, his voice filled with despair. "Julia, you're a weak, useless, heartless coward. I was so wrong about you. No wonder Ethan didn't want you. You deserve to be dumped by him, and you deserve to be used by me. Ha ha ha. Let me tell you, I never loved you. Every sweet word I ever said to you was a lie to get you to give me money and buy me things. That's all you're good for. Without your money and your pretty face, you are absolutely worthless. If I had another chance, I would rather marry a maid than ever look at you again." For the first time, Julia realized that the man she had loved and protected for so many years was nothing more than a shallow, materialistic parasite. She shoved him away, her voice a mixture of unspeakable anger and pain. The police led the still struggling man away from the Heiress estate. The moment the door closed, Julia felt as if all the strength had been drained from her body. She turned, dazed, and her eyes met a familiar pair. Seeing me, the despair in her heart deepened. She opened her mouth as if to call my name. "Ethan." I didn't respond. I held my hand out to Chloe, who stood beside me, and my voice was soft. "Now that that's over, it's time for you to serve tea to my parents. They must be getting impatient." Watching the two of us walk away together, the light slowly faded from Julia's eyes. A sharp pain bloomed in her chest, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. She felt as if something essential was being ripped away from her. On the drive home, Chloe was reviewing the medical report her assistant had just brought over from the hospital. She read the phrase "minor contusions, no internal or skeletal abnormalities" half a dozen times before she finally seemed to relax. I took the report from her hands and tossed it onto the seat beside me. "I told you I was fine. You were the one who insisted on the checkup this morning. Are you satisfied now?" Chloe said gently. "I needed to see the results for myself to be sure. It was worth the time." She had a point. I nodded, and then I remembered something important. "When did you get the security footage from Julia's house?" "This morning," Chloe answered simply. I was confused. She didn't know? She doesn't need to. After all, I have oversight of all her assets. Hearing that, a strange thought flickered through my mind, but it was gone before I could grasp it. All that remained was a strange feeling that I couldn't quite shake. But with everything resolved, I pushed it aside and cheerfully asked Chloe if she wanted to sample my cooking. She gave me a surprised look. "You know how to cook?" My 21-year-old self certainly didn't, but in my last life, I learned a lot from a nutritionist after my daughter was born. But I didn't want to brag, so I just humbly said I knew a little. Once we were in the kitchen, however, I managed to burn the beautiful fish to a crisp, filling the room with smoke. My confidence evaporated into embarrassment, and I scrambled for an excuse. "I mostly know how to make healthy meals. This is my first time pan-frying fish, so it's normal to mess up, right?" Chloe struggled to hold back a smile and nodded in solemn agreement. "Then you should stick to healthy meals from now on. That way we'll both eat well and live long, happy lives together." They were lovely words, but they filled me with a touch of sadness. In my last life, I only lived to be 35. She died the same year. Our lives combined didn't even reach 100. Even though I had changed our fate in this life, there was no telling what the future held. Seeing the distant look in my eyes, Chloe guessed I was thinking of something unpleasant and quickly changed the subject. But if you don't know how to cook fish, what made you want to try today? Her question left me speechless. I stammered, unable to come up with an answer, and finally, in a fit of pique, I playfully wiped my sooty hands on her shirt. I heard you liked it, so if I'd known you wouldn't appreciate the effort, I wouldn't have bothered. Chloe wiped my hands, cooing, anything my husband makes, I'll love it, even if it's burnt. Let's have some more fish sent over. I'll help you watch the stove. I'm sure we'll get it right this time. Her encouragement filled me with confidence, and I rolled up my sleeves to try again. After several hours and 3 more sacrificed fish, I finally managed to produce a perfect, creamy fish soup. Chloe immediately took a picture and posted it to Facebook, her first post ever. The first soup my husband ever made for me. Within minutes, it had over 100 likes and comments. When did Ethan learn how to cook? We never knew. I'm so jealous. I wish someone would make soup for me. You'll have to have him cook for us next time. Julia also saw the post. She saw my hand in the corner of the photo, the wedding ring on my finger, and the feeling of desolate coldness she'd been feeling reached its peak. That ring should have been hers. That soup should have been for her. But now it was all gone. She had nothing left but an empty, silent room. Where had it all gone wrong? Julia couldn't understand it, so she drank to forget. Tipsy, she couldn't stop herself from calling me. On the 4th try, I finally picked up. She could only hear the sound of soft breathing on the other end. She listened, her own voice heavy and slurred. Ethan, I was wrong before. I shouldn't have ignored you so many times. I'm sorry. I know you still love me, and you only married my aunt to make me angry, right? Divorce her. Come back to me. I promise we can have the wedding, the ring, everything. I'll be completely devoted to you from now on, she murmured, pouring out all the feelings she had kept hidden. But the person on the other end of the line remained silent. The endless silence began to frustrate her. Ethan, why aren't you saying anything? Honey, where's the hairdryer? Hearing my faint but familiar voice in the background, Julia's breath caught in her throat. A moment later, she heard Chloe's voice on the line. Just a second, I'll bring it to you. After that gentle reply, her tone turned instantly to ice. Julia, your priority right now should be dealing with the police, not harassing the man you have hurt time and time again. The line went dead. Julia felt her heart plummet into a dark abyss. On our end, Chloe was drying my hair with the hairdryer. I was scrolling through my phone and asked casually, "Did someone call just now?" Chloe nodded. Julia. She was drunk and rambling. I took care of it. The way she said, "took care of it," felt a little strange when talking about Julia. But then I remembered our new family dynamic, and I felt a strange sense of vindication. I was curious. You sound like you've done that before, but you're only 7 years older than her, right? Seeing the curiosity on my face, Chloe smiled. When she was in preschool, she was being mischievous and pulled a chair out from under our grandfather. He fell and broke his hip and was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I disciplined her quite severely for that. Ever since, she's been terrified of me. So that's where her fear came from. I finally understood. So if she's that scared of you, what's your opinion of her? Chloe's hand paused, and a complex mix of emotions flickered in her eyes. After a long moment of consideration, she finally answered. She's too impulsive, immature, not suited for great responsibility. It was a fair assessment. I was impressed by her sharp judgment and couldn't resist asking what she thought of me. This time, she hesitated even longer. Intelligent, rational, and decisive. And most importantly, you have excellent taste. In 2 lifetimes, that was the first time anyone had ever described me that way. But only I knew that those qualities had been forged in blood and tears. 7 years of a cold, loveless marriage. My daughter's horrific death. I held Chloe close, listening to the steady rhythm of her heart, and slowly let the painful memories fade. This was a new beginning. Time passed. On the day of the first snow, Leo Vance, convicted of theft, attempted murder, and several other charges, was sentenced to 6 years in prison. When the news reached Julia, she was already drunk and paid it no mind. For the past 6 months, she had lost herself in a drunken haze, rarely sober, and deaf to anyone's attempts to help her. And every time she was drunk, she would endlessly repeat my name. On New Year's Eve, Chloe and I returned from our extended honeymoon for the holidays. At the Hayes family's New Year's Eve dinner, her face glowing, she made a happy announcement. "I'm pregnant. The doctor says it's twins." Amid the chorus of congratulations, Julia lost her composure and dropped her glass. The whole family turned to look at her. Her face was pale as she forced the word, "Congratulations," through gritted teeth. Every second became unbearable for her. After just 10 minutes, she made a flimsy excuse and hurried away. That night, she didn't sleep. She didn't drink. She just sat alone in a corner, lost in memories of the past. Under the harsh light of a single lamp, she stared at the cabinet filled with all the gifts I had ever given her. The jar of 999 paper stars I folded for her when I was 10. The model kit I spent weeks building for her when I was 16. The bracelet I designed myself for her 20th birthday. As she looked at them, her eyes began to burn. She covered her face as tears streamed through her fingers. It was only in that moment that she finally understood what it meant to not appreciate something until it was gone. Even though she was only 3 months pregnant, Chloe had already started thinking of names. She had a list of a dozen names, for boys and girls, complete with nicknames, and she showed it to me. I put down the parenting book I was reading, and one name on the list immediately caught my eye. I picked up the small card and looked at the name Alara written on it, and my eyes filled with tears. "Why did you choose this name?" Though she didn't know why I was so emotional, Chloe immediately tried to comfort me. "You don't like it? We don't have to use it. We can look at the others." As she spoke, she started to pull the card away to discard it. I stopped her, holding the card against my chest. "No, let's use this one. I know one of them will be a girl. We'll name her Alara." I spoke with such conviction that Chloe handed me another card. "Then we'll name the other one Lyra." Hearing that name, I realized something was off. Alara was my daughter's name in my last life. Her grandfather had chosen it. But hearing this pair of names, I suddenly realized that Chloe must have been the one who suggested the name Alara in the first place. I remembered a time in my last life when I had taken my daughter to the estate to visit her great-grandfather. Chloe, who was always overseas, happened to be back. We ran into each other at the door as I was leaving. I greeted her politely and was about to go, but she, completely out of character, stopped me. "You brought her here by yourself? Where's Julia?" At the time, Julia was still drowning her sorrows over the news of Leo's marriage, and I would go weeks without seeing her. My heart ached, but I still felt the need to cover for her. "She's been busy with work lately. I didn't want to bother her, so I just came alone." Even after all these years, I can still remember the look in Chloe's eyes then. It was clouded with sorrow and a hint of pain. I didn't understand it at the time, but thinking back on it now, my heart filled with a complex mix of emotions. In my last life, I had been stubbornly determined to make things work with Julia, and Chloe had kept her feelings perfectly hidden. And so, we missed our chance. 7 months later, Chloe gave birth to twin daughters. Chloe and I agreed that our older daughter, Alara Hayes, would one day inherit the Hayes family enterprise, and our younger daughter, Lyra Sterling, would inherit the Sterling families. During Chloe's pregnancy, I stayed by her side and also managed her workload for the following 6 months. So after the girls were born, Chloe had plenty of time to help care for them. With my mother also helping, Chloe was able to enjoy a leisurely maternity leave. After her recovery period, we took the girls back to the family estate. Their great-grandfather was overjoyed. He divided the jewelry his late wife had left behind and gave it all to his 2 new great-granddaughters. The other Hayes relatives also brought lavish gifts, and Julia's parents even gifted the girls the private amusement park they owned. I remembered that amusement park had originally belonged to Julia. I glanced at her instinctively and noticed that in the few months since I'd last seen her, she had become frighteningly thin. As if sensing my gaze, Julia looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot, and after a moment, she looked away. Chloe followed my gaze and frowned slightly. In the year we had been married, she rarely asked about Julia, but she heard things from time to time. Although Chloe disliked her niece's spoiled nature, Julia was still her brother's daughter. And as the head of the family, she couldn't just stand by and watch Julia destroy herself. So, after the family dinner, Chloe asked Julia to join her in the study. I don't know what they talked about, but when Julia came out, she looked much better. The life had returned to her eyes. Seeing her looking revitalized, her grandfather and parents breathed a collective sigh of relief. On the drive home, I couldn't contain my curiosity any longer. "Honey, what did you two talk about in the study?" Chloe adjusted the blanket over one of the girls and took my hand. "I gave her the Riverwood project." I was confused. "That's it." Seeing my confusion, Chloe patiently explained. "She's been drinking so much because she's had it too easy for too long and has been wallowing in self-pity over a man. If I give her something to do, something to keep her busy, she won't have time to dwell on it. And it will keep her from drinking herself into an early grave, which I know her parents are worried about." The seasons changed, the years passed, and our two little girls grew up, learning to talk and call us Mama and Dada. Since we got married, Chloe, the renowned workaholic, started keeping a strict 9-to-5 schedule. Every day after work, her first stop, on my orders, was to pick up treats and toys for the girls, and a bouquet of flowers for me. The girls would hear her footsteps before she even opened the door, and would swarm her, chanting, "Mama, Mama." The CEO, a force to be reckoned with in the boardroom, was utterly powerless against the onslaught from her daughters. One moment she'd be pushing Alara on the swings, the next she'd be playing with Lyra and her toy train, never getting a second of rest. After 4 or 5 years of this delightful torture, Chloe finally reached her limit. The moment the girls were old enough, she enrolled them in preschool. On their first day of school, after we waved goodbye and watched our two little girls disappear through the doors, she let out a huge sigh of relief and pulled me away. Seeing how eager she was to leave, I chuckled and started to tease her. I seemed to recall someone saying how wonderful it would be to have 2 daughters, how she wanted to be with them every single moment as they grew up, how she was even going to start a daycare right in our house. And now, after just a few years, you can't take it anymore. Chloe rubbed her temples, deeply repenting her past naivety. Neither of us is particularly hyperactive. How did we end up with 2 children who are both bundles of chaos? I had a very clear opinion on this. I gave her a long, meaningful look. Well, don't you think it might be because you spoil them rotten? The second I try to discipline them, you jump in to play the peacemaker. How are they ever going to learn to be calm? If you ask me, you brought this on yourself. Chastened, Chloe didn't dare say a word in her own defense. Then I slid into the driver's seat and typed an address into the navigation system. Come on, let's go on a date. The weather's perfect. I heard a new spa resort opened up north. We can go enjoy the autumn colors. After a relaxing soak in the hot springs, we sat together by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the mountains covered in red and gold autumn leaves. Chloe carefully adjusted the robe around my shoulders, her movements patient and gentle. Looking into her gentle eyes, so close to mine, I was struck by a sudden feeling of unreality. After a moment of me just staring at her, Chloe playfully tapped the tip of my nose. What is it? What are you daydreaming about now? After a long pause, I asked her a question. If I hadn't married you, would you have ever married someone else? No. Her answer was so immediate and firm that it took me by surprise. Why not? Chloe leaned her head against my shoulder, her gaze distant. If it hadn't been for our arranged marriage, I never would have considered getting married at all. I knew she was telling the truth, but I also knew she wasn't telling the whole truth. She had left out a crucial part of that sentence. It wasn't just if it hadn't been for the marriage. It was if it hadn't been for a marriage to you. She would never have married anyone but me. I already knew the answer from my last life, so I had no doubt. But even in this life, after so many years of marriage and with our children growing up, she had still kept her lifelong crush on me a perfect secret. I had to admire her composure. For the girls' 6th birthday, their great-grandfather decided to throw a large party for them at the estate. I took 2 days off work, and our family of 4 went to the estate a day early to prepare. As the party was about to begin, the custom cake we had ordered days ago still hadn't arrived. Chloe offered to drive to the bakery to check on it, but I refused to let her leave, saying I'd rather have the staff bake a simple cake instead. But she knew how much the girls had been looking forward to their special castle cake and didn't want to disappoint them. Their great-grandfather, who doted on them, also urged her to go, telling her to be quick. I still refused. Chloe was about to argue, but when she saw my hands trembling slightly and the fear in my eyes, she relented and put the car keys down. It's their birthday. What's wrong? If you don't want me to go, I won't. Just cheer up, okay? I slowly began to calm down, but I couldn't bring myself to let go of her hand, because I remembered with perfect clarity that in my last life, Chloe had died in a car accident on our daughter's 6th birthday. Even though I had changed our story's path, I couldn't afford to take any chances. I had already experienced the pain of losing the person I loved most once before. This time, I would do whatever it took to keep her safe with me. When the girls learned their castle cake wasn't coming, they both pouted. I saw them later in the garden, holding hands on the swing set, letting out dramatic little sighs. Julia, who had just arrived, saw them and a gentle smile spread across her face. She walked over with the gifts she'd brought, about to surprise them, when she overheard them whispering to each other. Why won't Dada let Mama go get our cake? I don't know, but if Dada said no, Mama has to listen. Oh well, we can just ask Mama to get one next year. We'll be a year older then, so the castle will be even bigger and prettier. Hearing this, Julia's interest was piqued. What cake? The two girls ran and threw their arms around her, calling her Auntie Julia, and then explained the whole cake situation in their little kid voices. Julia nodded, handed them their presents, and patted their heads. You two wait here and be good. Auntie will go get the cake for you. But the girls didn't immediately agree. Instead, they each took one of her hands. No, thank you, Auntie Julia. Mama said we're having a regular cake today. She'll be mad if she finds out. Yeah, and if you go now, you'll miss the candles. Then there won't be enough cake for you. Looking at their bright, impish faces, for a fleeting moment, Julia felt as if she were looking at two miniature versions of me. The memory of me as a little boy, trailing after her and calling her name, was still vivid in her mind. But it was a shame that those days were gone forever. She closed her eyes for a moment, hiding the emotion there, before forcing another smile. It's okay, as long as you don't tell your mother. I'll go get the cake, but you have to promise to save a secret piece for me, okay? After the three of them made a pinky promise, Julia took her keys and left. Just before she walked out the door, she glanced back, as if compelled by some unseen force, and saw me leading the girls back inside. I still looked just as I had at 20, as if time hadn't touched me at all. But Julia knew that everything was different. I no longer belonged to her. Only after I had disappeared from view did Julia sadly get into her car. The weather was overcast and gloomy. She watched the distance on her GPS shrink as she waited at a red light. When she looked up, a beat-up old car pulled up in the lane next to her and rolled down its window. She turned her head instinctively, and her gaze froze when she saw the gaunt, skeletal face staring back at her. The next second, there was a violent impact. The window shattered, and blood sprayed like a fountain. Before the pain, there was only a wave of shock and confusion. Before she lost consciousness, Julia used the last of her strength to rip the necklace from her neck. From the shattered dashboard screen, a song was still playing softly. To think I once had you, it breaks my heart. I found out about Julia's accident 8 hours after it happened. Our family was staying at the estate that night. The girls were already asleep, murmuring, "Save a piece of cake," in their dreams. Chloe and I assumed they were still dreaming of the castle cake and were just discussing ordering a new one for them the next day when her phone rang. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a grave expression. She quickly grabbed a coat. My brother just called. Julia's been in an accident. I'm going to the hospital to see what's going on. Ethan, you stay here with the girls and my grandfather. Don't say anything to anyone yet. I was stunned by the news. I thought that by keeping Chloe home, I had averted disaster. I never imagined that Julia would be the one to get hurt. The date was the same. The circumstances were the same. It was a member of the Hayes family. All these coincidences made me wonder, was this fate or was this manipulation? If it was fate, why did Julia have to suffer the destiny that was meant for Chloe? And if it was deliberate, who hated the Hayes family enough to do this? I thought about it all night but came up with no answers. At dawn, I received an iMessage from Chloe. They couldn't save her. It was only 4 words, but I knew exactly what they meant. I clenched my fists and closed my eyes. My heart, which had been racing with anxiety all night, suddenly plummeted. So many years had passed. I had truly let go of the past, and had come to think of Julia as just a distant relative. But we had still shared more than a decade of our lives. Hearing of her death so suddenly, I felt the air leave my lungs. More than sadness, I felt lost and confused. There was the helplessness of losing someone from my past, and a deep fear of the randomness of fate. After the funeral, Chloe told me what the investigators had found. The police are calling it premeditated murder, but they have no leads on a suspect. The car had no license plates. They think it was stolen from a scrapyard. They're still investigating. There's one strange thing. From the moment of the crash until she died, Julia was clutching a necklace. They don't know if it belonged to the killer or if it means something else. Hearing that, I frowned. A necklace? What kind of necklace? Chloe showed me a photo they had taken at the hospital. I recognized the blood-stained chain instantly. It was the gift Julia had given me for my 21st birthday. I had taken it off and given it back to her the day before my wedding to Chloe. I never imagined she would have kept it all this time. A wave of complicated emotions washed over me. Beyond that, an idea was flickering at the edge of my mind, but I couldn't quite grasp what it was. After Julia's death, Chloe made a point of taking the girls to the estate every week to spend more time with her grandfather. By unspoken agreement, no one mentioned Julia's name. In the girls' minds, their Aunt Julia had simply gone on a very long trip, and would be back someday. Every time Chloe brought home a cake, they would insist on saving a piece for her in the fridge. Time slowly began to wash away the sadness in our home. As the girls grew, so did their capacity for mischief. If you turned your back for a second, they could turn the house upside down. I had just woken up from a nap one afternoon when I saw them huddled conspiratorially in a corner, looking through something. I was about to sneak up and scare them when they came running over to me, waving several sheets of paper. Dada, who is Stellan? I froze. I recognized what they were holding. They were Chloe's hidden love letters. I had been married to her for 7 years and had searched our bedroom from top to bottom for these, and our 6-year-old daughters had found them in an afternoon. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I carefully put the letters back in their box and then whispered a little plan to the girls. When Chloe got home, the girls ran up and surrounded her excitedly. Mama, who is Stellan? Why did you write him so many letters? Seeing the letters in their hands, Chloe's eye twitched. Just as she reached for them, she heard me clear my throat. I was leaning against the upstairs railing, grinning like a Cheshire cat. One look at my face and she knew I had read them. With the secret she had kept for decades finally out in the open, she actually seemed relieved. The nanny took the girls outside to play, and Chloe walked over to me, holding the letters. Before she could say anything, I held up my hands defensively. Your darling daughters found them. This had nothing to do with me. Chloe fell into my arms and laughed softly. They were always meant for my Stellan. How could it have nothing to do with you? After all this time, you finally admit it. I playfully tugged her ear. All right, fess up. When did all this start? And why didn't you tell me when we got married? With me, Chloe always surrendered. I wrote the first letter when you were 17, but I started falling in love with you when I was 13. Do you remember that year we both had the flu? My parents were so busy with work, they asked your mother to look after me. We were in the same hospital suite. You got better quickly, and you would bring me my medicine and some candy every day. But you were so intimidated by me you never said a word. You wouldn't even wake me if I was asleep. You'd just sit by my bed for an hour until the medicine was cold and you'd fallen asleep yourself. When I woke you, the first thing you'd do was take the cold medicine away to have someone warm it up for me. I've always been reserved. My siblings are much older, and everyone else our age was from a different generation. They were all afraid of me, so I was always alone. But you always greeted me politely. Whenever you gave Julia a gift for a holiday, you always made sure she brought one for me too. It was just you being kind and polite, but I never forgot it. I just knew you were in love with someone else, and with our age difference, I buried it all. I'm glad I finally have the chance to tell you. It had been so long ago, I barely remembered the things she was talking about. It turned out that while I had been reaching for my own star, I had been a guiding star in someone else's sky all along. So, the Santa who left a gift on my windowsill every Christmas, that was you? Chloe nodded against my chest. It was. And the tuxedo I wore for my 18th birthday. You slipped that in with Julia's gifts, didn't you? How did you guess? And the day you heard I wanted to marry you, you must have been over the moon. Chloe laughed. I couldn't find my way anywhere. The winter wind was biting and bleak. I stood alone on the empty rooftop, my mind heavy with anxiety. I didn't know why I was there or why, when I looked up, I saw the 3 people I never wanted to see again. Leo held a little boy's hand, his other hand tucked into Julia's pocket as she stood beside him. They walked toward me with arrogant smirks. Where's your precious daughter? The words echoed in my head like a nightmare. I frantically scanned the rooftop, searching for my daughter, but it was empty. I looked up again and saw the cold glint of a silver necklace, the sight of it making my eyes ache. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that when I opened them, I would be awake, back in reality. Today was December 7th. On this exact day in my last life, my daughter had been kidnapped and pushed from a rooftop. And in the early hours of this morning, I had dreamed of it all over again. I sat up, gasping for air, wiping the cold sweat from my brow. The small movement was enough to wake Chloe, who had been sleeping soundly beside me. She opened her eyes, her voice thick with sleep. Did you have a nightmare? I didn't want to worry her, so I just shook my head. It was just a little warm. I'm just adjusting the thermostat. Go back to sleep, it's still early. She murmured an okay, and was asleep again in moments. But I couldn't fall back asleep. I replayed the dream over and over in my mind, but the details were already fading. By morning, the only thing I could clearly remember was the necklace. The necklace. What did it mean? As I thought about it, my hand went to my own neck, but of course, there was nothing there. But that feeling of emptiness sent a jolt through me as I remembered something. The reason I had given the necklace back to Julia was because Leo had wanted it. He was so jealous of my life, he wanted everything I had. That would have included the necklace. Julia was clutching that necklace when she died. Was she trying to tell me that Leo was the one who killed her? The realization sent a cold shiver down my spine. Things that had confused me for years suddenly became crystal clear. In my last life, two major obstacles stood in the way of Leo becoming Julia's husband. The first was me and my daughter, Ilara. The second was Chloe. I held the title of Julia's husband, and Ilara was her daughter. And Chloe held the entire Hayes family's power in her hands. So he had acted ruthlessly, orchestrating a car crash and a kidnapping to remove us both from the picture. But in this life, because I had acted first, the story had changed. Now, Leo was out of prison. His parents were dead. His life was in ruins. Given his personality, there was no doubt he would come looking for revenge. Julia was dead. That meant the next targets would be me, Chloe, and our children. And today was December 7th. Everything was aligning just as it had in my last life. It was never fate. It was a plan. The moment I understood everything, I shook Chloe awake, urging her to get up. I dragged a still sleepy Chloe to the police station. We found the detective in charge of Julia's case, and I told him about the necklace. The police immediately used that new lead to track Leo's movements. Chloe and I stayed home with the girls all day, on high alert. That evening, we finally got the call from the police. Mr. Sterling, based on the information you provided, we were able to apprehend Leo Vance and an accomplice outside your children's preschool. He has confessed to everything. Hearing those words, the enormous weight that had been crushing my heart for years finally lifted. Our two sweet, innocent daughters, seeing my expression finally relax, ran into my arms for a hug. Dada, I'm hungry. I want sweet and sour ribs. Don't make ribs for Lyra. She lost a tooth yesterday and can't chew them. She can't? How about shrimp instead? You two are always thinking about food. I rolled my eyes playfully and nudged Chloe, nodding toward the kitchen. The children are hungry. Aren't you going to do something about it? Chloe dutifully stood up, but was immediately stopped by the girls, who grabbed her legs. If Mama's cooking, can we eat out instead? Or the nanny can cook. I don't want Mama's cooking. It's too salty. The sound of our family's laughter filled the house, mingling with the warm glow of the city lights coming on outside.